Imagine a world engulfed in conflict. The unthinkable has happened. Cities that once thrived with life and culture now lie in ruins, their streets echoing with the sounds of war machines. The skyline, once a symbol of human achievement, is now a testament to destruction. World War III has begun. Nations have mobilized their forces and the skies are filled with the roar of fighter jets. The world stands on the brink, teetering between survival and annihilation. It's a scenario we hope never to face. Families huddle together, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty as they watch the news unfold. The reality of war is no longer a distant nightmare but a present horror. But what if it did? Explosions light up the night sky, and emergency broadcasts interrupt daily life. The world as we know it is changing, and not for the better. How would the world react? Global leaders gather in tense discussions, trying to navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy and conflict. The stakes have never been higher. The outbreak of such a war would be a global catastrophe. Conflict zones spread across the map like a virus, consuming everything in their path. Cities burn, and the world watches in horror. The stability we take for granted would vanish. Empty grocery store shelves and closed borders become the new normal. The interconnected world we once knew is now fragmented and isolated. Fear and uncertainty would grip nations. People evacuate en masse, seeking refuge wherever they can find it. Bomb shelters become homes, and the fear of the unknown looms large. The world has seen the horrors of World War before. Smoke fills the skyline, and landmarks that once stood as symbols of resilience are now reduced to rubble. The scars of past wars are a grim reminder of what could come. The future would be uncertain. The path ahead is shrouded in darkness, and the future is anything but certain. The lessons of history weigh heavily on the present. But a third world war would be different. The scale and scope of destruction would be unprecedented. The grave sites of past victims serve as a solemn warning. It would involve weapons far more destructive. Advanced military technology and nuclear weapons would bring about a level of devastation never before seen. The consequences would be even more devastating. The aftermath of a nuclear explosion leaves a cityscape in ruins, with collapsed buildings and a haunting silence. The world would be forever changed. News of the war would spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the globe within minutes. Social media platforms would be flooded with updates, videos, and reactions, amplifying the sense of urgency and chaos. People would share their fears and concerns, creating a digital echo chamber of anxiety. Governments would scramble to respond, holding emergency sessions to assess the situation and formulate strategies. Diplomatic channels would be buzzing with activity as leaders sought to understand the implications and potential fallout. Military forces would be put on high alert, ready to act at a moment's notice. Emergency meetings would be called at the highest levels, with organizations like the United Nations and NATO convening to discuss collective responses. Delegates from around the world would gather, their faces etched with concern, as they debated the best course of action to prevent further escalation. Leaders would address their nations with grim pronouncements, urging calm and unity in the face of unprecedented challenges. Televised addresses would become a common sight, with presidents and prime ministers speaking directly to their citizens, trying to provide reassurance amidst the turmoil. The initial reaction would be one of shock and disbelief. Crowds would gather in public places, staring at big screens in stunned silence. Conversations would be hushed, as people tried to process the enormity of what was unfolding before their eyes. People would struggle to comprehend the situation, discussing the news with their families and friends. Homes would be filled with anxious conversations, as individuals sought solace and understanding from their loved ones. The distress would be palpable as everyone tried to make sense of the chaos. How could this happen in the 21st century? The juxtaposition of modern cityscapes with images of war would be jarring, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. People would visit historical war monuments, reflecting on the lessons of the past and the grim reality of the present. The world had seemingly moved beyond such conflicts. International summits and global cooperation had fostered a sense of harmony and progress. The sudden outbreak of war would shatter this illusion, revealing the underlying tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface. Fear and anxiety would quickly set in. People would rush to grocery stores, stocking up on essentials in anticipation of shortages. Crowded streets would be filled with anxious individuals, their faces reflecting the uncertainty of the times. The atmosphere would be tense, as everyone braced for what might come next. People would worry about their loved ones, fearing for their safety in an increasingly unpredictable world. Families would come together, hugging each other closely, seeking comfort in their shared bonds. Parents would hold their children tightly, trying to shield them from the harsh realities outside. The safety and security of their families would be paramount. Homes would be reinforced, and emergency supplies would be checked and rechecked. People would take every precaution to ensure they were prepared for any eventuality, driven by a primal instinct to protect those they loved. The world would hold its breath, bracing for the unknown. Silent streets at dawn would be a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle, as people stayed indoors, peering out of windows with wide-eyed apprehension. The sense of anticipation would be almost tangible as everyone waited to see what the future would hold. In the blink of an eye, the geopolitical landscape would shift. Old alliances would be tested. New ones would be forged out of necessity. Countries would have to choose sides. Some alliances would hold strong. Shared history and values would bind them together. Others would crumble under the pressure. National interests would take precedence. The world would be divided. Lines would be drawn in the sand. The stage would be set for a global confrontation of unprecedented scale. Modern warfare would be unlike anything seen before. Gone are the days of traditional battlefields. Technology would play a central role. Cyber warfare would be crucial. Hackers would wage war from afar. They would target critical infrastructure. Power grids, communication systems, and financial institutions would be vulnerable. Disinformation would spread rapidly. Drones and autonomous weapons would take to the skies. They would carry out precision strikes with minimal risk to human life. Artificial intelligence would play a role in decision-making on the battlefield. Section 5. Economic fallout, a global recession. The economic consequences of a world war would be catastrophic. Global trade would grind to a halt, supply chains would be disrupted, markets would crash, the interconnectedness of the global economy would work against it. The ripple effects of the conflict would be felt far and wide. No nation would be immune to the economic fallout. Inflation would skyrocket, currencies would plummet in value, businesses would close, unemployment would soar. The world would be plunged into a deep recession. Section 6. The human cost. A world turned upside down. The human cost of war is immeasurable. Millions, if not billions, of lives would be affected. Families would be torn apart. Civilians would be caught in the crossfire. Refugees would flee war-torn regions, seeking safety and shelter. Humanitarian crises would unfold on an unprecedented scale. The world would struggle to cope. The psychological toll would be immense. Trauma, grief, and loss would leave lasting scars. The world would be a darker, more uncertain place. Section 7. A glimmer of hope, seeking resolution. Even in the darkest of times, hope remains. Diplomatic efforts would continue throughout the conflict. World leaders would seek a peaceful resolution. International organizations would play a vital role. They would provide humanitarian aid. They would mediate between warring factions. They would work tirelessly to end the bloodshed. Public opinion would also play a part. Anti-war protests would erupt around the globe. People would demand an end to the fighting. They would call for peace and diplomacy. Section 8. The road to escalation, a cascade of conflict. In this chapter we delve into the intricate web of events that lead to the escalation of global conflicts. The world stands on the brink, with tensions simmering just below the surface, ready to explode at any moment. However, the path to peace would be fraught with danger. Soldiers on the battlefield face unimaginable peril, and every decision made in the war rooms could mean the difference between life and death. The stakes are incredibly high, and the margin for error is razor thin. Miscalculations and misunderstandings could escalate the conflict. A single misstep, a misunderstood order, or a misinterpreted signal could lead to catastrophic consequences. The fog of war is thick, and clarity is often a luxury that commanders cannot afford. The use of nuclear weapons would be a terrifying possibility. The mere thought of such an event sends chills down the spine. The launch of a nuclear missile would not only signify the failure of diplomacy, but also the beginning of an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. The consequences of a nuclear attack would be devastating. Cities would be reduced to rubble, and the loss of life would be staggering. The immediate aftermath would be chaos, with survivors struggling to find safety and medical help. Entire cities would be vaporized. Radiation sickness would spread. The long-term effects of radiation exposure would haunt the affected regions for generations, causing untold suffering and genetic mutations. The environment would be poisoned, making recovery a distant dream. The environment would be irreversibly damaged. The scorched earth would bear the scars of conflict, and the polluted landscape would be a grim reminder of the horrors of war. Ecosystems would collapse, and the delicate balance of nature would be disrupted. The international community would have to work together to prevent such a catastrophe. World leaders would need to set aside their differences and unite for the common good. Global cooperation would be the only way to ensure a peaceful and stable future. Diplomacy, deterrence, and arms control would be essential. Negotiations would need to be conducted with the utmost care, and treaties would have to be enforced rigorously. The path to peace is a delicate one, requiring patience, understanding, and unwavering commitment. The stakes could not be higher. The world stands at a crossroads, and the decisions made today will shape the future for generations to come. It is a time for wisdom, courage, and above all, a commitment to peace. Section 9. Conclusion. Preventing the unthinkable. World War III is an unthinkable scenario, but it is not an impossible one. As long as nuclear weapons exist, the threat remains real. It is our collective responsibility to prevent such a catastrophe. We must learn from the mistakes of the past. We must strive for peace, diplomacy, and understanding. The future of humanity depends on it. Let us choose hope over fear. Let us choose dialogue over destruction. Let us build a more peaceful and just world for all.